It was the fall of 1995 when Sony released their brand new polygon pushing the powerhouse of a console called PlayStation to the market in the West, and of course their strategy involved having a solid library of software titles coming out for it. Do you remember this time when Sony was the newcomer to the console market, and what were your thoughts about PlayStation in 1995? Let me know in the comments after the video. Twisted Metal was one of these games released in November 1995. It was developed by Single Track Entertainment Technologies and published by Sony Computer Entertainment themselves. Single Track also made games like Warthog and Jet Moto for the PlayStation. Twisted Metal was a violent car combat game involving front-mounted machine guns on your vehicle and the ability to shoot homing missiles and other destructive weaponry to take your enemy vehicles out. What we would call these days vehicular combat games. Sony clearly needed some of these titles to be aimed at an audience who started to be young adults at the time the PlayStation came out, and who had played games previously on Nintendo and Sega systems. Games weren't just kids' toys anymore. Twisted Metal could be more fitting game for that role at the time. I'll take a look at all 5, yes, 5 games on the original PlayStation. I only played the second one in the 90s, so almost all of them I have never played before playing them for this episode. Honestly, I didn't even know there were more than 3 of them on PS1. As I already mentioned, the original Twisted Metal was released in November 1995 in North America, and of course back then the releases were staggered. It was released in January 1996 in Europe and finally in November 1996 in Japan. This first game in the franchise is a very simple car combat game where your only goal is to destroy the enemy vehicle before it destroys yours. Well, that's the only goal in all of them. And if you are familiar with PS1 era driving games, you'd expect that X is throttle and square is brake. Well, not in this game. You throttle with square, brake with circle, reverse is down on D-pad. It takes time to get used to, and every time the action heats up, I'm starting to push the wrong buttons because of decades of muscle memory. It's like this in the second game too. The only one I have played before, but I had zero recollection of that. The last time I played it was probably in 1997. When you start the game, you have the option to choose from single player contest mode, which is the meat of the game, 2-player dual mode, and options to optionally change options. You can change audio levels, view the backstory, and watch some demo videos of the company's other games and the promo video of this game. Customization options will greatly improve in future titles. The story is about this legendary tournament called Twisted Metal, run by this maniac who calls himself Calypso. It's Christmas in the futuristic sounding year of 2005. The winner can have anything they could ever want, literally. Kind of an awesome prize if you ask me. I would participate too, and this is the story of pretty much all of them, so I'm not going to repeat myself for every game. The game takes place in American urban environments, from this arena to more open spaces like highways. As a Finnish guy, this outdoor hockey field makes me smile and brings back great childhood memories. You should use these repair stations scattered all over the map to gain an advantage over your opponents. They fix your vehicle and you regain some of your health. In later games, these are replaced just health regeneration items you would just pick up, like weapons. The game doesn't have memory card functionality at all and uses a password system, but thank goodness it's easy and short. Insert your own joke here. You are given a new password after every level you play through. The soundtrack is some sort of metal music I'm not too keen on, but works with this game, and it's streamed from the disc as Redbook CD audio. Early PS1 games utilized this a lot instead of using sampled music generated by Sony's custom sound chip. A good way to tell which one is used is to open the lid, and if the music stops, it's Redbook audio. If it continues to play, it's generated by the sound chip. Do I recommend you to play this first game? If you want to see where it all started, it's recommended. Otherwise, there are better Twisted Metal games to play these days, even on PS1. The sequel was creatively named Twisted Metal 2. Seriously, that's exactly how the sequel should be named. What did you expect me to say? It was still developed by Single Track and was released only 1 year later in North America in November 1996 and in February 1997 in Europe, where it was known as Twisted Metal World Tour. I didn't know this before doing research for this video, because even though I'm in Europe, I had the North American version back then, and of course it was released last in Japan in August 1997 as Twisted Metal EX. Twisted Metal 2, this is where it's at least in my opinion. Of course, this is one of the most nostalgic for me, so I'm biased in this case. Objectively, this is not the best game in this video. It was an evolution of the first game, but had improved in few key areas. I think these character portraits speak in this one too, and jokes are spot on. Her handling is ultra tight. Make what you will of that. Of course, the controls are still wrong, passwords are still here, short and easy still. The game streams music from the CD and is themed stereotypically based on location. This game takes place all over the world. I was floored by this Paris map back in the day. It's like real place. This one is recommended to play today, unless you are steered away because of its unorthodox control mapping. Play it on emulator and map the controls however you want. This is my personal favorite of the PS1 games in the series. Twisted Metal 3 was developed by 989 Studios and was released in 1998 in North America only. Yes, the first one in the series that wasn't released in Europe or any other PAL region at all. No wonder I wasn't aware back then there was a third game in the series on the original PlayStation. 989 Studios also made games like 3 Extreme and Twisted Metal 4 of course. They also published some games in North America like Siphon Filter and Buster Group. I can't help but mention that it's distracting that the loading screen progress bar goes in the wrong direction. This third game in the series introduced many firsts to the franchise. You can now rebind your controls however you want, and that's awesome. Many console games even today don't allow you to do this. It now supports DualShock and other analog controllers for the first time. At least this SPCH1180 controller works in addition to DualShock. There's also an option to turn off dithering for the first time, and it makes the game look a little bit cleaner, I guess. I wish more PlayStation games allowed this. Well, with an emulator you can, but on the real thing, I mean. You can also turn on frame skip. What this does is that instead of actual slowdown, game just skips the frames when it can't hit the target frame rate. I prefer this over the slowdown. The game is just more of the same. Nothing amazing over the previous one and nothing glaringly bad. This jig's handling is just tight instead of ultra tight this time around. It's different jig, but still. And I think I've seen this fire starter somewhere before. Last but not least, I found it infinitely amusing how Calypso's face is animated in the intro movie. 90s GG man, awesome.
They must face each other and some of my friends.
You are still here, great, I appreciate that. Why not subscribe to my channel for more content like this? Thank you. The fourth and final mainline installment of the series on PS1, Twisted Metal 4, was also developed by 989 Studios and released in November 1999 in North America, and just like the last game, it was never released in PAL regions. And yes, this time the bar in the loading screen goes both ways, mainly in the wrong direction though. My first impression playing this game was wow, this runs smooth, especially after the third one that had a rough frame rate. This one even included the prefer gameplay option in the options menu. I guess it improves the frame rate further with the expense of some effects, resolution or something. I didn't see much of a difference, and even enabling this, the frame rate can tank considerably when lots of action and explosions are on the screen. You can disable dithering in this one too, and even rebind the controls, even though they are pretty much correctly mapped by default for the first time in the series. Twisted Metal 4 lets you save the game on your memory card for the first time, but it still has passwords as well. You can now even create your own car. It's not very deep or anything, just choose your archetype weapons and specials and that's it. Nice touch though. Character portraits are now hidden behind the info button press when choosing your vehicle of destruction. I first thought the portraits were completely gone, but fortunately that's not the case, because they give character to the vehicles. No funny jokes about anyone's handling this time though. Twisted Metal 4 sure is the most feature-rich and technically advanced game in the series so far. It should be, because it was the latest one at that point, but as we know, it doesn't always go like that in the world of video games. As the next game in this very video shows, I'd even say, if you are going to play one Twisted Metal game on PS1, make sure it's this one. It plays the best and has more sensible button mapping by default. This offshoot is made for younger audiences and was developed by Incock Inc. Entertainment and released again only in North America in November 2001. PS2 was out at this point, and so was its own Twisted Metal game, Twisted Metal Black, by the same developers, which was released a few months before this one, well, a week and a half later in Europe. At least they released that one in here in Europe. PS1 was considered a budget system for younger kids at this point, so no wonder this last generation sister game for Twisted Metal Black was made for younger audiences. But that doesn't mean it's a bad game. I enjoyed playing it. The problem is that I played it right after Twisted Metal 4, which was a smooth experience with the controls however I like them. Small Brawl has a very low frame rate once again, and maybe even the lowest overall in the whole series on PS1. If you ended up with this game as a kid back then and didn't play the previous ones, it wasn't a bad game at all. Unfortunately, controls aren't freely rebindable anymore. The game gives 3 presets to choose from. One of them is the Twisted Metal 2 layout, which works, but after getting used to my preferred controls with the previous 2 games, it was rough going back to this. Graphics do their job, but gone is the ability to disable dithering and choice between performance profiles. As you can see, this game was step backwards from the last 2, and especially from Twisted Metal 4. As the name kind of implies, this game is all about small things. No jokes this time. The vehicles are radio controlled models and battles take place in places like Playyard, inside a house, a meat factory and even a treehouse setting, where if you are not careful enough can end up falling to your demise. Yes, this game has stage hazards now that can end you and your progress. I think it was a nice addition to the game. Fortunately, this game lets you save the game to the memory card after every level and always restarting the level after game over. It's a bit more forgiving than the previous ones. Vehicle stats are now conveniently shown without diving deeper into the menus. This is how it should have been from the beginning, but it took 5 games to get it right. Technically, this is 6th game in the series because it was released after Twisted Metal Black. Character portraits are still here under the info button press, and the images are more family friendly of course. Even weapons themselves are now more lighthearted. Instead of homing missiles looking like realistic weapons, they are mostly fireworks and toys. But front mounted machine guns are still just that. Realistic looking and sounding machine guns. Go figure. I don't know what's up with this game. Maybe the very low overall frame rate made me feel sick after a little over an hour of playing this game. I don't usually suffer from things like this while playing video games, so something is up with this one. Overall, it's worth playing, but just not worth playing over Twisted Metal 4. Like I said previously, if you are going to play one of them on PS1, play Twisted Metal 4. And there you have it, every Twisted Metal game on the original PlayStation. This franchise was one of the most important ones back then, and even though the games are rough around the edges, I think they are still fun to play today. Too bad Sony has forgotten this franchise exists these days outside of that new series that you can't even watch pretty much anywhere. Even though I played these games on a real PlayStation for this video, you can also play them and even improve them using an emulator on your PC. Watch my video about why you should do just that. Thanks for watching and bye for now.